Well, my name is Pinky Marsh. All of you know who I am, basically, by now, particularly in Union County. There's a lot of videos to come out before long and telling the whole story and how everything's done. But I'm asking the county really to clean the corruption up. And they decided they would do, they had rather live under the same conditions we've been living under. In 2008, after the Board of Adjustment, there's an election coming up, and I do intend to make sure, doing everything in my power to see that Senator Peterson is elected sheriff, because that's the only way we're going to expose these unclean hands in Union County and the cabal that actually controls Union County. To tell y'all, in 2008, I started operating the rodeo, and I had a roadblock on Lansford Road at the north end by the highway patrolman and the south end by the Union County deputies on Lansford Road. Didn't really know how it was tied to anybody or who it tied to. But I went to the county commissioners meeting the first week in June, and I blasted them. That's when they had the closed session. I thought it was a closed session, but come find out, closed session can only be with 3 or more commissioners. And there was only 2 present. There was Parker Mills and Kevin Presley. In this meeting, Kevin Presley told me he didn't know anything about it, and I knew he was lying, but I let him get away with telling me he didn't know anything about it, because he's the one that told me if I wouldn't show this petition right here, I wouldn't show anything, that they would have a closed session, they would straighten this out. But not wanting to harm the county anyway, I let him go along with it, because at that meeting, Lee Jensen said there was a petition. Al Green looked over at him and I said, "Was there?" And he said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Where's it at?" He said, "In my office." He said, "You want me to go get it?" And I said, "No, let's finish the meeting, because these gentlemen have to go, and we'll go get it afterwards, but I want it before we leave here." Well, we went downstairs. He found my petition, but he didn't find the other one. But he did tell me and Jerry Batt and Bill Hasty, he said, "I know who you're after. I know the names on there, some of the names on there." I said, "Yeah, you probably do." He said, "I'll get it for you." He said, "I'll get it from Bill Sturgis." Anyway, he said, "I know Bill Sturgis got a copy because I turned everything over to him." I said, "Okay." Well, the next day, this petition never happened. Said he was wrong. And as that thing's been progressed, he even gave me the emails from Al Green, gave me the email from Al Green, and he gave me the zoning ordinance, or the text amendment that he had written on my behalf, that Al Green said it couldn't been done. Okay, now we're going to give you the documents to prove this. As this thing goes, we're going to actually print the documents off and scan them so they actually come on this computer. When they lied to me, I went to see John Snyder. At this point, I didn't know how the DA's office was involved. And I went in and I told him a story, and I gave John this petition. This flyer. And John looks right at me and he says, "Pinky, you need to file a civil suit on the county." He said, "We don't need to be filing criminal charges." I said, "John, I dropped a civil suit last year and filed a mistake of law because I was asked to." I said, "I really don't want to sue the county." I said, "Is that criminal conspiracy?" He said, "Oh yeah." And I got up and I said, "John," and I pointed my finger and said, "John, that's your job, man. I shouldn't have to be doing this. Well, yeah. I promise the investigation, but I won't promise any results. I said, well, John, if you do the investigation, I'll promise the results. And he said, well, I'll get the investigation going. Well, needless to say, the investigation, I waited, and he never did anything. The next year, when I did the bullfights and dirt bikes in 2000, that was 2008. Well, in 2008, right after that happened, let's go back to John Snyder. Right after that happened, Jerry Marsh was trying to get another petition signed in July, end of June and July. And the neighbors all run him off. They told him, said, you go home. Said, we ain't had any problems. Said, you're causing a lot of problems in this neighborhood. Said, you go home. Said, we ain't had any problems down here, Jerry. And so nobody would sign the petition that he was trying to get together. And see, at this time, it was not about Pinky Marsh's Mexican rodeo. It had to be something else on this petition. Okay, because he even told some of the neighbors that it ain't over Mexican rodeo. Well, when you got the first petition signed, it was over Mexican rodeo, which is racial. 2009 rolls around, I did the bullfights and dirt bikes. I spent a lot of money putting that show together. I even offered it to the Hometown Heroes. I offered it to the hospice. Now, I can't do no more than I'm offering the proceeds, the biggest part of the proceeds to go to them, okay? And they're not doing anything. They didn't have to. I even told the president of Hometown Heroes, he said, well, we don't have time. I said, I don't need you to do anything. I'll spend all the money and I'll do it for you. Well, we can't. Well, what in the world was going on that a nonprofit organization couldn't take the benefits from my farm? So I did the bullfights and dirt bikes. Everybody that came said it was the greatest show they'd ever seen. But there were very few people showed up, even though I spent a lot of money with the radio station, with advertising and everything. I didn't understand what was going on. I did find out later I was going to be on the radio show again. And all of a sudden, Brett Pope was let go. He was the one that put me on the radio at Wixie. And each time people would call in and ask questions, it was getting longer and longer, and he promised them a third session with me, and so they could question me, and that show never happened. I don't know what happened to Brett Pope. So that was 2009. After that, I finally took this evidence to Sheriff Cathy. I took the flyer to Sheriff Cathy, and I told him the story. Sheriff Cathy told me, he said, Pinky, I said, you realize where this is going? He said, yeah, I do. He said, I told you, Eddie, I'd try to leave you out of it. He said, I appreciate it. I said, but I can't no more. So I gave him the flyer. He read it. He said, how in the H is the county getting this mess? I said, let me in the courtroom and I'll show you. I said, you want to? He said, John Snyder has never ordered that investigation. Said, it's got to come through me. I said, Eddie, I'm learning a lot about law. I said, I realize that it does have to come through you. He said, I said, you want to turn your guys loose on it? You want to call the FBI in? What you want to do? He said, sit down there in that chair right there and let me think a minute. He said, if I get you your citation, can you handle this in the courtroom right here? And I said, in front of 12 men and women, we'll be glad to take care of it. He said, I'll get you your citation. That was his exact words, I will get you your citation. But when he went to get me the citation, all of a sudden, he couldn't get a citation. They were working on something. And that's all he told me when I finally got the letter attempting to put a injunction on me. an injunction for doing nonprofit stuff? So I told him, I said, the Roadhawks is a nonprofit organization herself. And the president of the Roadhawks at that time was, I can't even remember his name right now. It don't make any difference. Anyway, he died since then. But he told me, he said, Pinky, I signed that petition against you at the hardware store. And I never realized what you were trying to do. He said, I love this place. This is beautiful. He said, what would you charge us to end the Toys for Tots bike rally down here? He said, nonprofit. I said, nonprofit? He said, yeah. I said, $1. I said, you got to have your own insurance and get your own permits. He said, we're a nonprofit organization, so we have all that. He said, he looked, I said, we'll clean it up for you. We'll have it ready for you, and we'll clean up afterwards. You don't have to do anything. We can do that. We'll do that for you. He said, man, that's great. So he gave me the $1. And I turned around and I gave him the $1 back. And I said, now put that back in your treasury. I said, $1 or so you paid me. This is your facility for that weekend. When I attempted to get the first injunction, and I talked to Eddie, he said, well, I ain't gonna sign it. So the next one I said, Eddie, I can't do anything. He said, Pinky, he said, I've done all I can do. Well, you've done all you can do. So I told him, I said, I rented it to Roadhawks to do the bike rally down there, in the bike rally for Toys for Tots. It always ended in town. And he said, I said, Eddie, I said, I'm not going to be in town that weekend. I said, if you got a citation for me on Monday morning, I'll be glad to pick it up. Don't waste no taxpayers' money. Don't drive any gas out. I said, just call me and I'll come and pick it up. And he knew I was not in town, but yet they put a SWAT team out there to stop this bike rally. I'm cleaning up for the bike rally, and I got the phone call from my attorney. He said, are you ready to go? And I said, I can be ready in a minute. He said, you need to leave. He said, I just got the information that they're going to attempt to put an injunction on you, and you need to be out of here. I said, I can be out in 5 minutes. I said, I'm ready to go. He said, well, leave. So I left. Eddie knew I wasn't in town. Instead, the taxpayers had to pay a SWAT team looking for me for 4 days. On Thursday, a deputy from the courthouse, Mike Laney, he was one of our patriots down there at the farm. Come down there and eat with us all the time. He calls my son Jimmy, and he said, Jimmy, what's going on at your dad's place this weekend? Jimmy said, I don't know why. He said, well, ain't they having a bike rally down there? Jimmy said, yeah. He said, what are they going to do? He said, I don't know. He said, come on down there and we'll go over there and see. We'll have a beer with them. He said, well, what are you going to do? Jimmy said, when he kept asking that, he said, Dad, I felt like, hey, you're being set up. He said, it's time to get this thing started then. So Jimmy told him, he said, who all's going to be there? Jimmy said, oh, hell, the outlaws, the pagans, I don't know who all they were, Hell's Angels, they're all going to be there. He said, they're going to do burnouts. He said, oh, sure. I asked Jimmy later, I said, what are they going to do burnouts on sand? I said, sure, they're probably going to spin tires. But I doubt if I got anything over there they're going to do a burnout on. But anyway, the whole issue was I was doing it for a nonprofit, for Toys for Tots. Okay? And then Eddie Cathy says it wasn't for Toys for Tots. That's what that bike rally has always been in the town of Marshville. That was where they distributed money for Toys for Tots and also the battered women's shelter. It ended in Marshville every year for several years, and they wanted to end it at my place. Well, I didn't get my hands a hold of it, but Al Green sent out an email that no deputy car would go past Wingate, would not pass Wingate, escorting the bike rally for Toys for Tots. Why would you do that? Folks, anybody asked any questions yet? Why would you do that? Anyway, on Monday morning, Kathy called Reed and said, "Where's your friend at?" Said, "I need to see him ASAP." And Reed said, "I don't know, but I think I could figure out, I might be able to get somebody that can locate him." So they finally got up with me, had me to call Reed, and I called him. He said, "Eddie, Kathy wants to see you ASAP." I said, "You tell him I'm in a card game." I was playing cards with my wife and another couple. I said, "Tell him I'll be there when I get there." But as we were sitting there, I got to thinking about the card game. I said, "Nah," I said, "let's go." I said, "I still got a little ways to go to get back home." I said, "I'm not into the card game here now." So I left and went back. Eddie handed me that injunction. He said, "You forget it now." He said, "I saved you." I said, "You saved me from what?" He said, "The FBI called me and told me the Hells Angels and Outlaws and all the bite, you were fixing to have a mess down there." I looked at him and I said, "Eddie, don't tell that lie. Don't tell that lie again. I know who told it. I know where you got your information." So that was my injunction that they put on me. I called my attorney. He said, "Don't worry about it." Said, "We'll get in the courtroom. It'll be reversed." Said, "I don't have time to put the case together and go after an injunction thing too." I said, "Okay." He said, "But we get in the courtroom, everything will be reversed." I said, "That's fine." So I went along with the attorney again. That was 2009. 2010 rolls around, John Snyder's up for re-election. John Snyder sees my son at the Pier Restaurant in Marshville. Tells him, said, "Jimmy, tell your dad to call me." I said, and so he called me, told me. I said, "You're going to have to get the number." Said, "I've lost it." So he got the number from J.C. Griffin. J.C. Griffin give me John Snyder's phone number. I called John. John said, "Pinky, I know I'm running behind." Said, "I'm so busy." Said, "I apologize for not ordering that investigation, but I'm going to get it started right now." Said, I'm gonna call the FBI in." I said, "Okay." John Snyder talked to me before the primary, because he was in a strong primary. He talked to me 2 or 3 times a week for about a month. Okay, sometimes, at least 3 times a week for about a month. The last time I talked to John Snyder was on Monday night, right before the May primary. John told me, he said, "Pinky," when I called him, he said, "I'm busy getting ready for the election tomorrow." I said, "If you would," said, "call me tomorrow." I said, "John, let me wait until Wednesday." I said, "If you win tomorrow, you'll want a party and all this stuff." And I said, "Then I'll call you Wednesday." He said, "That'll be good." And from then on, if I called him, he never picked the phone up. I never talked to him again. 2010. Well, I got the word that it was a rodeo going on William Griffin Road starting that summer. I don't know exactly when it started. 2010 on William Griffin Road. It was on a tract of land over there that was owned by Hispanic people. And every time the sheriff's department got called out, I didn't find out until last year that it's only written up as loud music. But I do know that when the deputies were called out, they told the people when they showed up that they couldn't do anything, and they felt sorry for them. Now, this was not even on a bona fide farm. But they got called out several times that year for the rodeos. Well, why did the deputy say they couldn't do anything on this rodeo and were doing everything they could against mine? This began to get a little fishy, ain't it? Well, William Griffin Road, to let y'all know, is between Marion Cox and Sammy Starnes. Now remember I told you that the first lawsuit that I was threatened with come from Jerry Sutton, who was married to Mary Cox's niece. Okay? Now, when the rodeo is formed on William Griffin Road, and the deputies and the sheriff's department can't do anything, the zoning department didn't do anything, what was this over? Well, the reason they wouldn't do that is anybody question themselves yet? If they can't do this, and it's not even on a bona fide farm, and they can't do anything, you reckon they thinking I'm going to sue over racial discrimination? You reckon the county was going to use that in the federal courtroom against me on racial discrimination? Well, needless to say, I didn't sue for racial discrimination. Instead, that fall, I filed for fall of 2010, I filed for equal protection under law, 14th Amendment in federal courtroom. I was the only person that had been shut down. Well, it seems like John Snyder appointed one of his assistants, Anita Jeanette Mason. You find a way to shut Jay Brown down. So she found a building code ordinance, building code state statute that was written in 2009 that any building that had 10 people or more in it had to be sprinkled in the state. Okay, this law had to be passed by somebody selling a sprinkler system, because that meant every building in the state or the county had to be sprinkled. If you had Marshville don't have any buildings, neither does Waxhaw hardly. You know, all those old buildings, they don't have a sprinkler system. Well, they happened to use that against Jay Brown to obstruct the federal courtroom. Okay? Now, not really knowing what's going on behind the scene there until we get in the courtroom, and they shut Jay Brown down on January 1st. On January 1st, when they shut Jay Brown down, they claimed that an anonymous phone call came in, and that they had a complaint there were too many people at this rodeo. Well, they go in the federal courtroom and they say, well, Mr. Brown shut down, I was not any longer the only person that had been shut down. But they didn't tell that they shut Mr. Brown down over a building code. They said he volunteered to shut the rodeo down. Mr. Brown didn't volunteer to shut anything down. As soon as I found out Mr. Brown had been ramrodded, is when I was able to get to him. He had already met with him twice, so I made sure he had my spy equipment on. So now y'all got another problem. Okay? Now the county has another problem. You have illegally gone after another business, and you've used the 3 J's that were actually ran on property rights, jobs and property rights, right? Y'all sure did. You ran on corruption. That's what you ran on. Anyway, I lose in the federal courtroom because of your lies. And then I turn around and we get all the evidence together on this right here, but the federal judge ruled that with prejudice. That means I can't bring that case up again. Well, I'm going to tell y'all something. No nobody in the state or the county has a right to file criminal charges except the sheriff or the DA's office. Now, if the DA's office is involved now, and the sheriff's office is involved, there's no way for you to file criminal charges unless you can prove a conspiracy to obstruct justice at the federal courtroom. Okay? So this thing is really getting pretty interested, ain't it? When Jay Brown filed suit, all of a sudden we were able to, this anonymous person shows up. This county has been able, using their legal staff, and how much money you have been paying for this legal staff to cover up the unclean hands in this county is unreal. A girl by the name of Katie Fox said this phone number belongs to a girl by the name of Katie Fox. Well, needless to say, old Pinky Marsh runs down Katie Fox. She didn't have that phone number January 2011. That phone number belonged to a county official. Someone in the county that was on a appointed board. You want to know how I find that out, you're going to have to wait a little bit later because I can't give all the evidence out there. Well, that was in 2000, and that was the year 2011. Jay Brown beat you in the courtroom 3 times. On the 4th time, you finally get a judge to rule against Jay Brown. After he done breached you 3 times in the courtroom, you continue doing your bull crap. Well, okay, so you finally come up with your judge that would actually rule for Jay Brown, for the county instead of Jay Brown. Rule without merit, lawsuit without merit, to try to financially ruin him as you have done me. But folks, that ain't